All right, what up, y'all? Back in the basement. This is take two, transparency alert. You know what I'm saying? So, here we go. So, aside from the little tangent I went on the last episode, so to speak, getting to like what we actually learned in class. And so, when we first started the class, and this feels like a century ago, y'all, but it also doesn't feel that long ago because I think we talk about it all the time. I put down there's three parts of a contract. There's like the steps of it, but honestly, your biggest thing that you want to get out of it is that there needs to be an offer. Let me highlight these. That might be for my benefit too. There needs to be acceptance of this offer, assent, in which we will talk about, and there needs to be consideration. And these three things right here, if you don't have these are elements, then a contract can't be formed. Okay. Everything else here, kind of like the steps to get there, right? Like when an offer is given, you start to bargain for it. And so maybe somebody says, "Here's a lawnmower, and I'm offering it to you for $50." And you said, "No way, dude. 40, right? 45, 44, 42, 43. All right, sick. Shake on it." And then when you shake on it, that's acceptance. That when I said 43, okay, and when I said 43, the person on the other end, reasonably, they would understand it as if I said yes to this, that concludes the deal. Okay. We're going to get into that too when we talk about the restatements. And then consideration. This is the part that when we first learned about contracts, is kind of a, I don't know, it was a little bit less clear, but I think it's way clearer now. Funny how that works. But essentially, consideration is what is exchanged, like a benefit to be given, and or a detriment that is induced or not induced. But there needs to be some kind of benefits, detriments, et cetera, for a contract to be formed. And once a contract is formed, then it's enforceable. Okay, and then after enforceability, right? I mean, we start to worry about enforceability if there's a breach in the contract. And when there's a breach, that means somebody didn't fulfill their end of the contract. Okay. Something that was said was not lived up to. So we're going to first turn to acceptance. Okay. And I'm going to flip back and forth between my restatements and outline. And this is going to feel a little messy, but I think it makes sense. I think the way I have it makes sense. So, um, but the first thing we'll go over is we're going to first talk about these four and then go into a case. But step one is that the restatements in which we focus on mostly in class is a contract is a promise or set of promises, okay, to which if it is breached, the law gives a remedy. So for instance, if I were to give an example of this, right, I went through that lawnmower example where I bought it. I mean, we bargained, he accepted, and um, you know, he takes the lawnmower and the payment, the check that he gave me, is actually like it bounced. And I'm like, whoa, like you just got a benefit and you didn't keep your end up of the bargain, right? Um, Now, day to day, I'd probably just approach the dude, right? But let's say he was particularly stubborn, in which I could go to a court and like sue this man for not fulfilling the contract. And within that contract, this is where we talk about like promises, right? I mean, when we talked about the lawnmower, like I said, I promise to give this lawnmower in exchange for you giving me $43. Okay. So two promises. Those are kind of obvious. There are things that are less obvious, right? I promise to do your homework if you stop pestering my dog. And, a little bit more questionable for sure, but it is kind of a promise. And there's an action on one end, and then there's a forbearance of an action on another one, right? Um, how a promise is made. So notice that in all of the examples we talked about, nothing was ever in writing. I think that's when we think of contracts, we think of big business suit ties, skyscrapers, titanium and steel with giant pens and big old long parchment in order for you to sign away your life. And not everything like that is a contract. Things like, I mean, oral contracts in your day to day happen all the time. Chances are you probably entered into like a mini contract today, you know, like, hey, you got some snacks, like I'll give you a pen for it. And that's like a mini contract. And then lastly, and this is what we'll talk about when we talk about our case that's coming up, is restatement 21, and it's the objective theory. And this is the idea that your intent to make a promise, if I jokingly said, I'll show you this lawnmower for $43, but let's say my tone wasn't as such. I was just kind of a monotone dude and said, I'll sell you this lawnmower for $43. And in my head, I was like, I'm totally joking and I think this is funny. And the other person, it doesn't matter what my intent was, because maybe in my head, I said, yeah, I don't actually intend to sell this thing. But the reasonable person looking into the situation would look at what I said in my manner in which I said it and say, I think the dude was serious about it. And that would be enough. Okay. And so if you look at my little commentary, to a reasonable person, it seems like a contract. And therefore, I mean, that's all it really takes. Okay. To talk, oh, no, what did I do? Okay. To talk about the case at hand, the case that we went to at the very early days, it's called Allen versus Bissinger and Co. in 1923. And this is that like weird case where um I'm gonna botch these facts because I don't really need the facts that hard, but there's like an ICC person that was the plaintiff, and the defendant was like a freight company person. And the defendant, but the freight company, they had asked for these reports from the ICC, and they said, send it, we'll pay whatever it was. But I mean, they didn't ask like how long it was or whatnot. And the ICC said, sure, I mean, we'll send it. And I mean, it was thousands of pages, and they got it in batches. And so they got a few. And then the freight company person was like, I didn't know that it was going to be this long. I'm going to ask that you stop sending these, or we'll pay for whatever you already printed already. But from here on out, if you can just stop. And the ICC person was like, well, you asked for one report. Well, he didn't say this to them, but essentially it was like, I got to send you the whole report because the report's not done. Like, I only gave you part of it. And so continued, like, sent the rest of the report. And the report was like, I forgot the dollar value on it, but it was something outrageous. And so the posture was that, what was it? The trial court ruled for the plaintiff. And the appellate court ruled for the defendant. So that's why Allen is the ICC person, I believe, and they're trying to overturn it. Anywho, the takeaway from this case is that if you were to kind of look at the situation in which that ICC person, the Allen person, was um, interpreting what Bissinger said, I want a report. And he didn't ask, like, how long is the report? How much I might pay for it, right? It's like, okay, I'll give you one report. The reasonable person would look at it and be like, I mean, I gave you what you asked. It's not what you expected, but we don't care what you expected. I just care about, like, what you assented to, okay? And so my takeaways here is assent of an offer is what is said. What you said is what you said, and be careful what you say. And two is that I don't care what you thought. I don't care if it was a mistake. what the reasonable person would have thought, given them looking into the situation, is what matters to enforceability of whether a breach or not happened. Okay, moving on to the next after a short break.